Jananing Sharadang Deving Ramakrishna Jagatguru Padapadme Tayo Sritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Good evening. We have assembled here on the occasion of Shramana Ruya Memorial Lecture. As is the custom, we are going to speak about the man on whose memory the lecture is being arranged. Shramana Ruya was born in 1921 and died in 1994. He was a self-made man who built his fortune brick by brick, starting his mundane career as a business executive at someone else's establishment. He ended at establishing 4 noted companies and more than 1 charitable institution. But his forte was religion. He indeed was a religious soul, and Indology was his passion. He helped in retrieving Indological works considerably, as far his wish his worthy son, Sri Deepak Kumar Ruya and Sri Pawan Kumar Ruya, noted industrialists, created Shramana Ruya Endowment and sponsored this memorial lecture. I welcome these Ruya brothers, if they are present here, on behalf of the Institute. Today, Mrs. Shramana Mitra, CEO and founder 1M by 1M Silicon Valley, USA, will deliver the Shramana Ruya Memorial Lecture. And this lecture would be presided over by Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee of Jadavpur University. I would request Shramana to speak for 40 to 45 minutes on the subject, the future of capitalism, and I would request Professor Mukherjee, Vivekananda Mukherjee, to comment on the lecture for 10 to 15 minutes only. And after the talk by Shramana, there would be an interaction session. Some of you might have some questions you can put to her, and she would be glad to answer. I will have to say a little bit of Shramana. Shramana Mitra was born in 1970. She is the founder of 1 million by 1 million, the first global virtual accelerator for entrepreneurs. In 2010, she founded this 1M1M, a global virtual accelerator that aims at helping 1 million entrepreneurs globally to reach $1 million in annual revenue and beyond. 1M by 1M is our 4th venture. It is headquartered out of Silicon Valley and operates as a virtual company, drawing team members from all over the world, including different parts of the US, India, Philippines, Malaysia, Turkey, Israel, etc. In 2015, she was included on the exclusive list of LinkedIn's top 10 influencers. Family. She was born in Calcutta in an old family with roots in entrepreneurship as well as education and public service. Her father, Praveen Mitra, founded the Himalaya Shipping, one of the first container shipping lines in India. Her great-grandfather, Sir P.C. Mitra, was an advocate of the Calcutta High Court, a minister in pre-independent Bengal. He was also a member of the delegation to the Round Table Conference in 1930-32. Sir Ramesh Chandra Mitra, his father, and her great-grandfather, was a judge of the High Court, Calcutta. He was also, for some time, the first officiating Indian Chief Justice. Shramana attended the Gokhale Memorial Girls' School in Calcutta. In 1989, she left India for college in the United States. She had a BSc in Computer Science and Economics from Smith College and a Master in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from the MIT. I need not go for other details. She has published so many books. Her contribution to so many journals. Anyway, this is Shramana. She was very favorite child of Swami Lokeshwarananda ji. When she was just a toddler, she used to come with her parents to this institute. Our Swamis still know her very closely, and her father is one of our best friends, Pravidda. Her uncle Malayada is over here. They are our well-wishers also. This family was related to Swami Niranjanananda also, you know. Sir Ramesh Mitra and Niranjan Maharaj, they were cousins. I welcome Shramana to speak on the subject. Since I was to preside over this function, this speech, I thought it would be better for me to just speak a few words in the beginning, because we have requested Professor Mukherjee to do the job, because I am not very much connected with economics as such, though I feel this topic, capitalism, it has more of, say, sociological elements than economics, I should say. Today, the future of capitalism to many appears to be very bleak. Pure capitalism you can see nowhere. But the type of capitalism that we see will have to survive, and it has to be made brightest so that we can have a bright future. All individuals would have to have bright futures. We have to grow under the protection of this new type of capitalism that has come up. It has to take its final step yet. That is my firm belief. It is proceeding towards that. That is the only way available to us right now, because it's arch rival, so to say. Socialism or communism, they have no future. They are all dead. Even Marx is dead, and the Marxists who used to call God is dead, yes, it is dead to them. But new God has appeared in the scene. And that God is the God of Vedanta, which Swamiji has given us. We love capitalism because it affords the individual traits. Our individual characteristics are not sacrificed. But the claim of socialism or communism is that we have to sacrifice ourselves at the altar of the collective. Their concern is man, and the concern for capitalism is God, and there is eternal conflict between man and God. They say we worship God, we preserve all our individual traits, while other group says, no, our concern is man. And Swamiji came forward to reconcile. Yes, you want God, okay, I will give you a God. And you want man to serve him, I say, you can do that. How? I say, God, man is God. Worship him, serve him, but never exploit him. That is called democracy, more than anything else, democracy. These democratic values are to be upheld. We have to enshrine these values very much. And what Swamiji says, I tell you. Swamiji wanted to see a group of children raised in the knowledge of Advaita. Let them know the truth. Let them know the truth alone, free from the genetic hocus pocus, from the notion that the knowledge runs, or the universe runs on the whims of a personality, however sublime. He felt that democracy was the more suitable soil for the growth of Advaita. And it is capitalism under which democracy flourishes. That's why he wanted capitalism to flourish, so that democracy can become a philosophy of life. He also said that in a democracy, the king has entered into everyone. Mind that. We are all kings. King has entered into everyone. We are all divine beings. As spirit, we are all one. We are all divine. Not only ordinary king. Tagore says, Amra Shobai Raja, Amader ei Rajar Rajotte. This is democracy. Democracy has done this job for all of us. Amra Shobai Raja. Democracy says we are all kings. And Vedanta says that a real king has entered into all of you. That's why capitalism or democracy has become the fertile soil for Vedanta to flourish. And what would happen with this Vedanta? Now is the time for Advaita, for the worship of the other God, man. Advaita means worship of the God in man. That if Vedanta, the conscious knowledge that all is one spirit, spreads the whole of humanity, will become spiritual. So capitalism plus worshipping man as God. This is Vedanta. Swamiji wanted this Vedanta for all of us. There is no dogma here. You don't have to believe in anything. You have to have faith in the spirit within. That spirit is nothing but Atman or divine. In that very sense, we are all kings. You just remember that famous song of Tagore, Amra Sobai Raja, Amaderi Raja Rajat. So democratic values will have to be upheld. Individual traits are to be preserved. Man as spirit is God. We have to worship, serve, respect each and everybody and not to exploit. So the best results of communism will come. Equality. So in this concept of Vedanta, flourished under capitalism, under the protection of capitalism, that is a very, very sincere idea, very sincere thought that Swamiji has given us. This is practicable. But we are not yet ready to accept it. We still have some doubts. Doubts that we are not divine beings. We are all divine beings. And Swamiji has asked us, if you are not divine, then what are you after all? Are you cruel? Are you demoniacal? Would that be a very comfortable identity of yours? So you are divine. You are divine. Anyway, I request Shramana Mitra to start her lecture. Please, Shramana.
সবাইকে শুভ বিজয়া নমস্কার জানিয়ে শুরু করছি। রামকৃষ্ণ মিশন কালচার ইনস্টিটিউটের সঙ্গে আমার একেবারে ছোটবেলা থেকে অন্তরঙ্গ যোগাযোগ। স্বামী লোকেশ্বরানন্দ মহারাজের অকুণ্ঠ স্নেহ এবং উৎসাহ একেবারে প্রথম থেকে সঙ্গে পাবার সৌভাগ্য হয়েছিল। আজকের আলোচনা ইংরেজিতে করব। শুরু করলুম বাংলায়। আপনাদের আজ সকলকে এখানে উপস্থিত থাকবার জন্য অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে। I grew up in Calcutta in the 70s and the 80s. As you might recall, those were mostly communist years in this part of the world. Against this backdrop, at 16, I discovered the writings of Ayn Rand, which first drew my attention to the capitalism versus socialism versus communism distinction. In Ayn Rand, I found a very important concept that resonated with me: excellence. A pursuit for excellence in whatever domain you choose to pursue, coupled with strong work ethic and a commitment to creating value, for me, epitomized capitalism. Built into this basic assumption is that you get compensated for creating value. Producers produce, consumers consume by paying the producers for the value they create. It made perfect sense to me. Corollary to the theorem of excellence is if you're not brilliant, you're either mediocre, in which case you live a middle-class life, and if you're lazy, uneducated, etc., you live a life of poverty. The exception to this rule is if you win the birth lottery and inherit an upper-class lifestyle, or you can marry into an upper-class lifestyle, but by and large, your merit and work ethic determines the outcome. Maybe a somewhat simplistic representation, but at its core, the capitalistic system is designed to produce inequality by rewarding achievement. You may ask, is this a fair system? This question at a philosophical level needs to make a fundamental distinction in the definition of fairness. What do you believe in? You produce, therefore you deserve, or you exist, therefore you deserve. If you believe the former, then capitalism is a very fair system. If you believe the latter, then capitalism is a blatantly unfair system that can only be set right by wealth redistribution so everyone can have a good life. At least in my early youth, I held an unambiguous view that fairness equates to the you produce, therefore you deserve theory. I'm a technologist, an entrepreneur. I have to earn my keep, and I like the accountability of that path. I live in America, the temple of capitalism. In fact, I live and work in Silicon Valley, the seat of the modern Renaissance. For a very long time, America worshipped free market capitalism as the only path to follow. After World War II, the country experienced tremendous growth, and a large, comfortable middle class thrived for over 50 years. And then, two tectonic shifts happened. The internet took over the world, and globalization became a large-scale phenomenon as a result. Manufacturing jobs moved to China, IT and BPO services jobs moved to India. American middle class got hollowed out. China and India grew at a fast pace. Tremendous poverty reduction took place. Free market capitalism allowed the entire world to join in the capitalism bonanza. America and Western Europe lost. Asia won. It turned out to be a zero-sum game. Today, governments are questioning whether free market capitalism is still the best path forward. If you are following the American election, Donald Trump has been running on an anti-immigration, anti-globalization platform. The Republican Party in America has always been a champion of free market capitalism. And they are horrified at this protectionist turn of events, but the fact that Trump got the party's nomination tells us there's a lot of bad feeling against immigration and globalization. In recent years, we've seen the rise of speculative capitalism as a much more powerful force than the brand of capitalism that I got seduced by. The 2008 financial crisis exposed the flaws in the global financial system, and especially the level of corruption driving Wall Street's fortunes. What does Wall Street do? What do speculative investors do? They speculate. They trade. Real estate investors do that too. They buy low and try to sell high. Except, leading up to the 2008 financial crisis, worthless real estate, subprime mortgages, were being peddled by banks to their customers, sugar-coated as credit default swaps, a fancy name for garbage wrapped with fancy paper and a ribbon. Something in the temple of capitalism started stinking. At this point, I want to draw a distinction between two types of capitalism. Real capitalism, where value gets created and producers get rewarded mostly deal in what we call in economics real goods. Then there is the domain of financial goods. Some of it, especially investments that help entrepreneurs create value through debt or equity financing, can be of great value. But a large portion of the finance industry just moves money from here to there. They don't create a lot of value. They create, however, a lot of wealth, and a lot of it through a corrupt, speculative system, a bit like a casino, gambling, not so good. Corruption took speculative investing to extremes and crashed the market in 2008 and nearly destroyed the global financial system. Governments bailed out too big to fail banks, privatized profits, and socialized losses became a matter of great dissatisfaction among taxpayers in countries that had to bail their banks out. People started asking the question, does capitalism still work, or is the system now rigged beyond recognition? Excellence without integrity doesn't yield a fair system. There was plenty of intellectual horsepower in Wall Street. People who could have been great physicists or computer scientists and created real value instead became traders on Wall Street. But there was so much money to be made. They sold their souls and dedicated their brilliant minds to milking a corrupt system. This is the point in 2008 when I, too, started questioning capitalism. At that time, I used to write a weekly column for Forbes. I wrote a piece called Capitalism's Fundamental Flaw that remained on the homepage of Forbes.com as the most read article for a month. I analyzed the current crisis of capitalism as a speculator versus value creator debate, not a rich versus poor debate. I prescribed that we need to go back to a capitalism that focuses on value creation, entrepreneurship that creates value, solves problems, addresses challenges. Take the example of Bill Gates. No one begrudges his fortune because he has served humanity by putting the personal computer literally in every home. And it has immeasurably improved the lives of billions of people. No one begrudges the fortune of Steve Jobs. He has put a supercomputer in every hand through the smartphone revolution. Again, immeasurably improved the lives of billions of people. No one begrudges the value creator's fortune because they have earned their wealth. But people resent fortunes amassed through rigged systems, corrupt processes, and dishonest means. Today, one of the greatest challenges that capitalism is facing is that speculative capitalism has become a dominant force. This dominance needs to be controlled, especially the corruption needs to be controlled through regulation. I would like to focus next on entrepreneurial capitalism, where at least to some degree the correlation between value creation and wealth creation isn't quite broken. Finance, in this corner of the universe, actually does serve as a tool for creating value. Venture capital is the direct instrument that we use along with some other financial tools to build companies that address customer needs. Venture capital is a great tool. However, it has limitations. I spent many years in the venture capital-driven entrepreneurship world. I've done venture-funded startups as founder and CEO, and I've raised a lot of money for my companies. But the venture capital model is very particular. It fits businesses that are going to grow at a hyper-fast rate and that also address very, very large market opportunities with total available market sizes of multiple billions of dollars. The universe of companies that fit these requirements is minuscule, but they get all the attention. If you read the popular entrepreneurship media, everybody assumes that entrepreneurship equals financing. I grew up in this world and I kind of drank the Kool-Aid for a while. But I'm someone who's curious, with out-of-the-box questioning tendencies, so I asked myself, what the hell is going on here? Well, over 99% of the businesses that come to look for financing actually get rejected. They get rejected for a very good reason. They don't fit this ultra-high growth, hyper-large market size framework that drives venture capital financing. But many of these companies are perfectly viable businesses. The message entrepreneurs are getting is that if they cannot raise financing, they cannot build businesses. That is a completely wrong message. Many of the businesses rejected by venture capital are going to be perfectly fine 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 50 million businesses built over 10, 15, 20 years. And these businesses need to be built. The problems that these businesses would solve need to be solved. I started asking, why have we created this myth that entrepreneurship equals financing, when in reality, entrepreneurship equals customers, revenues, and profits? This is the philosophical underpinning of 1 million by 1 million, the global virtual accelerator I have started. To put things in context for you, on the one side of the entrepreneurial universe are ventures like Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, that have become multi-billion-dollar enterprises. On the other side of the spectrum is Adi Dhakeshwari Vastralaya, a sari store that has been around for generations. But it's not a billion-dollar enterprise. Venture capitalists won't fund a sari store that goes to, say, 10 crores in annual turnover after 5 years. But in the economic pyramid, it is critical to have such businesses flourish. And for this purpose, the notion of bootstrapping is super critical. Bootstrapping is building businesses largely without external financing. My analysis is that such businesses are absolutely critical in the next phase of capitalism to mitigate the economic inequality that has been created in the world today. Today's entrepreneurial capitalism is driven by venture capital, which has an inherent tendency to create very large fortunes, but very few of them. How many Googles have you heard of? How many Facebooks? And thus, fortune accumulates in the hands of a few, very few people. In 2014, the top 1% of America's wealthy owned 40% of the nation's wealth. Fortune has been steadily accumulating at the tip of the economic pyramid. My observation, however, is that in Silicon Valley we have learned a lot about how to build successful businesses following the principles of capitalism. If this knowledge can be broadly disseminated, and a much larger number of entrepreneurs start building successful businesses, doesn't have to be billion-dollar businesses, can be 2 crore businesses. That would drive fortune in the middle of the economic pyramid. And that is both possible today and necessary today, given everything else that is going wrong in the global economic system. My vision for capitalism in its next phase is a distributed, democratic capitalism whereby millions and millions of entrepreneurs build small and medium businesses that are profitable and sustainable in the long run. In other words, we need to create fortune in the middle of the pyramid. So how is this possible to accomplish? The answer to this question is not finance, it is education. In fact, again, the entrepreneurship ecosystem is misreading the challenge and running after financing as the solution. I don't believe that. I believe entrepreneurship education is of paramount importance, and that is what will drive broad adoption of a capitalistic system of value creation as well as wealth creation, although more modest than the billionaire fortunes. No, we will not create 1 million billionaires, and that kind of excess is not necessary. Just to give you an example, the morning after the Brexit vote, as Europe watched in horror, I spoke with a Greek entrepreneur who runs a $5 million company called Marine Traffic. People are leaving Europe in droves right now. Europe is a fine example of the kind of disaster that socialism creates. And yet, here, Dimitris Memos had created a successful business from Athens that speaks to my vision: democratic distributed capitalism. As of July 2016, youth unemployment rate in Greece stands at 50.3%. Spain is at 43.9%. Italy is at 39.2%. France is at 24.4%. It's a dreadful, tragic story of several lost generations. If Europe could mint 1 million entrepreneurs like Dimitris, the continent could be saved. I have another example from Kolkata. Pallav Nadani runs a company called Fusion Charts. It's not $1 billion company, but it is a technology company that every year does over $10 million in revenue. Up to $7 million in revenue, this company operated 100% from Kolkata, but with a global clientele. Now they have a Bangalore operation as well. What if we had 100 of these right here in Kolkata? What would that do to the economy here? What if we had 1,000? This is my work today. In 2010, I founded 1 Million by 1 Million, 1M by 1M for short, the first global virtual accelerator in the world. Our mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue, build $1 trillion in global GDP, and 10 million jobs. We run this out of Silicon Valley, but work with entrepreneurs all over the world. The program is first and foremost an online educational program where you get to learn the nuances of technology entrepreneurship from over 700 successful entrepreneurs. We also do active mentoring and make introductions to potential customers, channel partners, investors, media, analysts, etc. One of the companies from the program, Freshdesk, has raised over $100 million in venture capital and has some 40,000 customers around the world. The company was born in Chennai, but has moved headquarters to San Francisco recently. I'm very proud of Freshdesk. I am, however, equally proud of a different type of entrepreneur that I have encountered through our work. You see, we do these free online mentoring sessions every week. One day, a first-year college student from Siliguri came to the mentoring roundtable and pitched an idea that he was working on. He wanted to use Uber-style GPS-enabled technology to power a small business delivery network in his regional market. I found it fascinating that this boy had come up with a decent concept, found 1M, and was pitching this to me half a world away. And this happens every week. We work with entrepreneurs from all corners of the world, not just India, Africa, Asia, Latin America, everywhere. And of course, US and Europe continue to be big markets for our work. So I do believe entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial capitalism can be democratized, and wealth can be created in the middle of the pyramid using capitalistic principles. In the next 2 to 3 decades, the potential for distributed capitalism is very high, and the outcome should be extremely positive around the world. In the next segment of my presentation today, however, I need to also alert you to what is happening beyond that time frame. In the 30 to 50-year time frame and beyond, technology and automation will create tremendous disruption. 60 to 80% of all jobs will likely get automated. Now that is a scary situation. I'm sure you're thinking, oh, I've heard this before, machines replacing jobs, new jobs always emerge. Yes, in the Industrial Revolution, for instance, this was a major concern, but we've seen tremendous job growth since then. This technology revolution is, however, different. Before, machines could not think. Now they can. And because of the processing power available in tiny chips, they can think incredibly fast, process unbelievable amounts of data in a nanosecond. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics are moving forward at breakneck pace right now. The march of automation looks pretty much unstoppable. Let me give you an example. China managed to do tremendous poverty reduction on the back of manufacturing over the last couple of decades. But no longer can industries employ huge masses of people and drag populations out of poverty. Foxconn, one of the largest manufacturing companies in China that makes iPhones for Apple, this May eliminated 60,000 people out of their 150,000 workforce. These people were replaced by robots. We can safely assume that India's poverty reduction strategy cannot be manufacturing, because new factories would inevitably use robotics, not people. Agriculture is seeing very similar levels of automation as well, by the way. I'll give you another example, this time software, not hardware. In the advertising industry, media buying and allocating budget to various types of advertisements and various media outlets has been a crucial job. Today, advertising is shifting online rapidly, and media buying in the context of online advertising is a 100% automated job that is performed by software, not human beings. It's all done with mathematical precision, measured in real time, and human beings just cannot play in this rapid-fire software application game. Same thing happens in finance, by the way, with real-time, high-frequency trading, where human beings simply play no role. Machines think, machines look at data, machines make decisions in split seconds. Let's talk about the field of medicine. If you think about what a doctor needs to do to diagnose an illness, she needs to consider all the symptoms, take into account all the test results, consider all the treatment options, factor in all the side effects of various medications and their interplay with other medications the patient is already taking. This is effectively a multivariate optimization problem that a doctor has to do in her head. And she needs to keep up with all the new research and advances in medical science and factor those in as well. The field of medicine is full of incorrect diagnosis and mistreatment of illnesses. Now, if you replace this whole process with software, which IBM is trying to do with their Watson supercomputer, medical diagnosis becomes a truly scientific, deterministic process. I can tell you, if I have the option of being diagnosed by software versus a human doctor, I would always prefer software. It will be far more accurate. In the medical field, there are also tremendous advances in robotic surgery. So the medical field will get dramatically disrupted in the next 30 years. The legal profession will face similar disruption, with lawyers getting replaced by software. There are, of course, both pros and cons in this disruption. If the medical profession can be automated to that extent, billions of people can have access to quality medical care. Today, this number is relatively low. That would be a huge positive outcome of automation in the medical field, for example. In another industry, transportation, there's already huge disruption underway. Some of you are already using services like Uber and Ola. These are replacements for taxis. Well, the taxi industry is a major employer, and this trend is going to destroy enormous numbers of jobs. And this one isn't even a few decades away. It's here, now. It's upon us. Then we have self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles that drive themselves, including trucks. This technology is almost ready. If governments allow autonomous vehicles, this will eliminate the requirement for drivers. If you have a combination of ride-sharing a la Uber and autonomous cars, Pricewaterhouse predicts that 99% of the vehicles on the roads can be removed altogether. The total size of the fleet will fall from 245 million vehicles to just 2.4 million vehicles. I'm going to repeat. The total size of the fleet will fall from 245 million vehicles to just 2.4 million vehicles. Car ownership drops. This eliminates entire professions like truck drivers, taxi drivers, shrinks the car manufacturing industry dramatically, car insurance industry gets decimated, car service industry shrinks, massive disruption. 10 million jobs will disappear. Of course, sitting in Kolkata, you are thinking, boy, it would be so much better if fewer cars were on the roads. Maybe India can leapfrog to ride-sharing on self-driving cars and no car ownership. Huge improvement in quality of life. Pollution goes down, we can breathe, congestion goes down. That's right, that's the positive outcome of this disruption. One thing that we should consider in this context is the role of government policy. There are certain aspects of this disruption where government cannot play any role. For instance, whether a factory uses massive automation or not is their business, not the government's. The government cannot stop a manufacturing plant from automating its operations, but the government can choose not to authorize self-driving cars and trucks. So the government can choose to slow down the march of technology, especially one that is likely to impact 10 million jobs, as the autonomous vehicles innovation would do. At MIT, Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee have been modeling these changes and have published a huge body of work. If what I'm talking about is something you want to investigate further, please look at their findings. So to net this disruption out, in about 30 to 50 years, 60 to 80% of all jobs will be automated. Even software can be developed by code generators. What won't get automated? Scientific research will survive. Creation of art, of music, of films, of culture will survive. Playing professional sports will survive. But the vast majority of people will have nothing to do professionally. And this has already started. In 1990, the top 3 car makers in Detroit had a market capitalization of $36 billion and 1.2 million employees. In 2014, the top 3 firms in Silicon Valley, with a market capitalization of over $1 trillion, had only 137,000 employees. Let me repeat. $36 billion market cap in Detroit in 1990, 1.2 million employees versus 2014, over $1 trillion of market cap and just 137,000 employees. So what does society look like in an all play and no work world? You see, work is an essential block of the human existence today. Work offers identity, structure, meaning. If you take work out, human beings will have to figure out what their identity is all about. If they don't have to go to work for significant chunks of the day, they need to find alternative means of creating structure. These are not easy things to come up with on the fly. in a post-work world, there is the danger of people with nothing to do becoming zombies who watch television all day long or play computer games. An idle brain is a devil's warehouse, as the saying goes. I find the idea of a society comprising mainly of idle people extremely scary. Now, this is also a scenario in which capitalism fails. Most people don't earn any money anymore and have to be put on some sort of welfare. Inequality grows to extreme levels. Only a very small percentage of people make huge fortunes. There's a small affluent class. The rest has no jobs and hence no means of subsistence. Welfare in that scenario needs to grow tremendously. People are already talking about universal basic incomes. That's an option. People are paid a small amount of basic income to cover all their basic expenses. It's very expensive to implement if 7 to 9 billion people need to be supported on such programs. But say we can figure out a way to afford universal basic income. At that point, society looks very close to a communist dream. Everyone has a basic income. Food, clothing, shelter needs are met. The basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy are well addressed. Yes, there is tremendous inequality with the concentration of wealth at the tip of the pyramid, but the bulk of society operates in a communist model with the lowest common denominator level of lifestyle. Except it's an utterly discouraging and uninspiring mass mediocrity scenario. There are, needless to say, two schools of thought. An utopic one in which society becomes so rich that people's basic needs are all met and people have infinite leisure to pursue art, music, scientific research, sports, hobbies, friendships, spiritual contemplation. A dystopic one in which people become zombies. 8 to 12 hours a day of television watching instead of going to work, long unproductive days, identity crises, social unrest, crime. And by the way, people are quite poor. Basic needs are met, but no one has any money to buy anything discretionary. So people don't have any incentive to produce anything of value either, except the basics. Or some luxury products for the super rich, which no one else can afford. The super rich go on vacation to Mars on Elon Musk's spaceship. Humanity, otherwise, lives an uninspiring existence. All this is not that far away. 30 to 50 years. Capitalism will come under tremendous duress, if not an existential threat. We will go back to a fortune at the tip of the pyramid society, and that tip will be incredibly small. A few thousand people will control all the wealth in the world. Capital will drive wealth, not labor. There is no reason to work, hence there is no incentive to work. People who own the machines will make the money. And that's one of the key issues driving the concerns over the future of artificial intelligence. French economist Thomas Piketty has written extensively on the subject of inequality and concentration of wealth in recent years. His book, Capital in the 21st Century, calls for massive wealth redistribution through taxation. I can't say I'm necessarily comfortable with his ideas, his solutions, but he is certainly pointing to the right problems. This level of inequality, without some well-thought-through strategy for social re-engineering, will lead to revolution and anarchy. Karl Marx, of course, predicted that capitalism will eventually destroy itself, giving way to socialism. In the last 100 years, the opposite has happened. Capitalism has emerged victorious, communism failed, and the socialist countries aren't looking so bright and shiny. But in 50 years, if capitalism does indeed destroy itself, then perhaps Marx would be proven right. I don't know. I'm neither a communist nor a socialist. I happen to be a capitalist. So all this makes me rather queasy. Nonetheless, I cannot help but acknowledge that capitalism will, in the not too distant future, hit the wall. And then what? I don't have answers. I urge you to think about what a post-capitalism society might look like, what a post-work society might look like. I don't know if this transition will happen in my lifetime, but it will definitely happen in the lifetimes of those who are 20 years younger. And it will happen within the next 30 to 50 years. Perhaps we come to a point where karma yoga becomes a less dominant guiding principle for humanity to live by. Perhaps bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, Raj Yoga takes a more central place in our way of life. But it will require a drastic reorientation in how society is organized when capitalism is dead. And by all indication, I think it is safe to say that in 50 years, capitalism will be dead.
Huge amount of money, but they cannot utilize so much of money among their family. So this money will remain in a particular person and no utilization of that money. It should be flown to the poorer person. Is there any way to that? They should be taught like that so much money, say that in our case Reliance, they got one house 400 crore rupees cost, yes. But no need, they only one son, and they are just misusing this money. If they distribute it to the other person, that can be utilized. In that way, if they think, if they are taught in spiritually, then is there any way?
There are actually a couple of different answers to your question. America is very smart in how they've handled... Can you hear me? Huh?
Can I take it?
Huh?
Yeah, go on, continue.
In America, the tax system actually encourages philanthropy. You get tremendous tax breaks if you do philanthropy with your wealth. So if you have the double incentive of doing philanthropy and avoid taxes simultaneously, I think that's a very effective way of structuring a tax code. Does that answer your question? To some extent.
I think the gentleman in the front here.
You started with Durga greetings, our puja greetings. And Durga Puja Sapsati starts with a good noble king and good businessman. And it ends with good environment. That's the real story of Durga Puja, not the fashion parade. So we should have to go to, as Swamiji told, to our real knowledge, and Vedanta business should come up. So, and just let me speak a little bit. And what is happening in this value addition is very nominal. People who are add values, a farmer grows something, sells in 10 rupees, in market you get in 40 rupees. Is it a value addition? The only transfer of some transport, etc. This whole system is very, very corrupted. And the regulation, as you said, that regulated democracy and business or capitalism will come. Who will regulate them? Very difficult. Today, as you told about medical system, all the medical system is corrupted. And people are not getting good benefit. You see in doctors and everybody is suffering like...
I have no argument and no answer about corruption. Corruption is a given.
So how to regulate these things? That is the most important...
Some things can be regulated. For example, the 2008 financial crisis that was the result of a tremendous corrupt system. There has been some amount of regulation, not enough. But some amount of regulation has been put in place. Banks now have to, for instance, hold a lot higher reserve currency to qualify, to be able to not be bailed out by the government. So that's at least one little corner of regulation that has been put in place.
But
the last thing is that the worst situation is that the global warming and this present industry has just done very, very dangerous things with the nature. And how we will get future business and our own self...
we understand. I think we got your point. I think the question is that the regulation, when you are talking about regulation, the capitalist system, in the capitalist system, the capitalist can also control the regulation, right? So there will be pressure from the capitalists themselves on regulation, and that is another crisis of capitalism.
The whole lobbying and bribery and that whole system is extremely corrupt, no question.
Thank you, madam. I am Raja Mitra. You see, you have just spelled out the future of capitalism in global scenario. But you see, the reduction of poorer people, reduction of poverty, you have you have given the example of China, which is very much relevant to India. You see, in actual terms, the capitalist itself destroying the capitalism because of the fact, if in this India and China, if you grow in small scale area, even if you distribute your entrepreneurship through 1 billion of people, then naturally wealth and growth will not distribute to all these billions of people all over India. So naturally, capitalism will face some danger. You see, if you look at the scenario
if you have a specific question, then
that's why. Then what is the problem, or what is your solution to these problems? Because you see in Asia, there are so many countries like Korea, Misr, etc. For this financial problem, there are anarchy and changes of political system, etc.
Would you like me to answer your question?
Please specific.
What are the solution?
Have you got the question?
I've got the question.
Okay, so then
to this enormous poverty lying in India.
So later answer the question. Yes. So next I'll go to you. So please raise your hand before asking question. So do you have any answer to this?
I can answer a little bit of it. I don't have a full solution, but see, you have to. As I said, China's solution to poverty reduction is not going to be India's solution to poverty reduction, because the manufacturing industry has completely changed. Manufacturing is becoming automated. So India is not going to be following China's path to poverty reduction. The beauty of capitalism, and I believe in the next 3 decades, let's say, this still applies. The first part of my talk, you remember, is about being very optimistic about democratizing the fruits of capitalism. I think that is still the best solution for India's development at the top level, at the mid-level, at the grassroots level, everywhere. Microfinance, for instance, is a very good tool, a very good economic model for development in the grassroots level. Beyond that, we have much bigger challenges.
So I think you,
Shramana, I must compliment you for a very illuminating lecture.
Thank you.
It's very good. But before I comment, I'd like to have a clarification. You said that the total number of vehicles required will drop down to 2.4 million from 245 million. What is the basis?
I haven't studied the whole model, but the basics of that is that if people stop owning cars, and this is the assumption based on which this research has been done, if people start not owning cars, now if you can just hop on and off Uber style vehicles, and then you don't necessarily need to own vehicles, you don't need to park, there are lots of advantages, you're already encountering the advantages of a system like Uber. So if that becomes the norm of society, then the number of cars required, the number of cars being manufactured is going to be much smaller. The number of cars in circulation is going to be much smaller. That's the basic line of thinking.
Your presentation is quite scary, I must say. The technology replacing human beings.
Which is very scary, actually.
Scary. Only positive thing is that I won't be around.
So I think we should go back, go to the back. So if you hands I can see over there. So go to the back.
Oh,
you have a question? Okay.
Well, Madam, you have presented a reasoned requiem of capitalism as you see it. But in your scenario of post-war capitalism, you picture it this way, that there will be billions of people who will simply have no work to do. But at the same time, you assume that there will be some sort of a mechanism or system which will provide them with the basics of life. Now, these basics of life wouldn't fall from heaven. These will have to be produced.
Absolutely. You picked up something very important.
Yeah, in that case, the positive side that you have, well, actually underlined in the first part of your lecture, that capitalism has its future in entrepreneurial
Capitalism, yeah.
and that is, I think, is still going to survive in spite of...
It will not survive.
Why?
The reason it will not survive is because if everything gets automated, then...
You then assume that it will get automated universally and at the same time for all over the world. This is not going to happen. There are so many diversities and so many differences all over the world. In the form of capitalism itself, capitalism is not uniform. And therefore, the kind of scenario, new types of jobs will, of course, definitely...
This is the age-old argument. So your argument is the utopics version of the argument. I personally don't believe that, so we have to agree to disagree on this.
Well, the basics are not utopic.
No, I think...
But providing the basics is a very expensive proposition, and that is not a given at all. I agree with that completely.
So I think... so no question, no... Okay, I think many questions are there, but... so how many questions can we have? Okay. Okay, I think since we don't have time, you can have many questions and you may ask her personally after this program is over. Okay, so there is no restriction in that. Okay, so please hold your question for some time, and after this session is over, you can get personally to, the questions to her, ask the question and get your answers. Okay, so I think, so I should conclude this session. I should thank the speaker, Ms. Mitra, and in fact, her talk was very much thought-provoking, and we can see that. So many questions from the audience, and the future of capitalism, according to her, is very bleak. So, in that sense, it's a kind of resonance of the old Marxist thought, because remember that Marx's prediction was that capitalism is a transitory phase. So, there are many inherent contradictions, and for which it will ultimately fall to socialism and these things. And ultimately, that came out from her speculation for next 50 years. You know that there will be increasing conflicts between the capitalists, the top 1%, and the people at the bottom. Even if you talk about redistribution, the burden of redistribution will be so much that there will be, and why the capitalists will agree to that? So that's the question. So there will be increasing conflict in the society, and this is something which Marx predicted. So, but still, the the prediction was there, theoretical prediction was there, and that was quite robust, theoretically. But capitalism didn't fall. So we have seen that, because capitalism has inherent tendencies to reinvent itself over time. And we have seen that it has reinvented itself over time, and it has survived. So you may expect, we don't know what will happen in next 50 years. Okay, maybe it will reinvent again, and it will survive. Okay, so the future we don't know. So let's hope that capitalism will survive and the Vedanta will be there. And so I call the end of the session. Okay, so you may interact outside, okay, with the speaker. Thank you.